A father abandoned his deaf son at a train station. A wealthy businesswoman discovered him there. What unfolded afterward is truly remarkable. The dad left his young boy on a crowded platform with just a small backpack and a heartbreaking note. Several hours passed before a woman in business attire pulled over her vehicle and spotted the deaf child standing there alone, frightened, exhausted, and defenseless. What began as a simple gesture of compassion quickly evolved into an unbreakable connection that transformed their worlds completely. Because true family isn't always about genetics. True family comes from genuine care and affection. Before we dive in, please share in the comments what hour it is in your location and which part of the globe you're viewing from. Let's get started. Riverside Boulevard had a completely different atmosphere after sunset. Massive office towers rose up like weary sentinels. The overhead lamps blinked on and off. Glowing advertisements hummed loudly. Vehicles rushed past rapidly, their headlights creating extended yellow and orange streaks. A few pedestrians remained outside, though significantly fewer compared to daytime hours. Most hurried along quickly, jackets pulled tight around their bodies, anxious to reach their homes before the chill intensified. Yet standing in the hectic transit hub was a small boy. His movements were uncertain. His backpack hung loosely from his shoulders. His little fingers clutched a faded stuffed rabbit against his body, as though it represented the sole comfort remaining in his existence. His name was Daniel. He had just turned 7 years old. He was deaf. He was starving. He was exhausted in ways no young person should experience. His blue cap sat crooked on his head. His green striped shirt showed dirt stains and wrinkles. His worn sneakers scraped along the concrete. They shook with each uncertain step. He made no sound. He shed no tears. He simply remained standing there, not from choice, but because his father instructed him to stay put until a caring stranger noticed him. That same morning, Daniel had awakened to find his father sobbing. Their tiny apartment consisted of barely 2 rooms. Robert, his dad, sat slumped at the kitchen table with his head buried in his arms. Tears streamed down his weathered face. He'd recently lost his warehouse position for the 3rd time. His supervisor, a harsh and impatient man, had terminated him without any advance notice. "You make too many mistakes," he'd stated bluntly. "Clear out your locker. You're finished here. No final wages, no second chances, nothing." Robert walked back to his apartment with $0 in his wallet and overwhelming despair in his soul. He wished desperately for divine intervention. He prayed constantly that somehow circumstances would improve. However, when he stepped through the doorway, all he encountered was Daniel sitting by the radiator, drawing pictures quietly and holding his stuffed animal. "Dad, is everything all right today?" Daniel signed with his hands. Robert attempted to appear cheerful. "Sure, kiddo." But Daniel studied his father's expression carefully and signed back, "Your face looks sad." That straightforward observation shattered Robert's composure. Everything had collapsed around them. Groceries, income, medical care. The specialist had cautioned Robert that Daniel required hearing devices immediately. His condition was worsening steadily. If they delayed much longer, communication would become nearly impossible as Daniel aged. Robert had attempted every possible solution, pleading with relatives, taking loans from acquaintances, missing his own meals, accepting odd jobs for minimal compensation. Yet none of it proved sufficient. He could no longer provide proper nutrition for his son. He could no longer purchase the necessary medical equipment. And he couldn't stand witnessing his little boy retire to bed hungry another evening. His spirit fractured in ways he never imagined possible. Therefore, he composed a message. "Please assist him. I have no means to provide for him any longer. He requires medical devices for his hearing. Please, whoever locates him, show compassion. Robert." His fingers trembled badly as he folded the paper and tucked it inside Daniel's backpack pocket. Then he wrapped Daniel in a lightweight jacket, kissed his head tenderly, and communicated through signs and tears. "Stay near the benches, my son. Someone will notice you, someone with a good heart." Before overwhelming shame could prevent him, Robert turned away and departed. He abandoned his child to the unpredictability of strangers, hoping desperately that a kind-hearted person would rescue him. Now, As evening shadows covered the station, Daniel stood exactly where his father had positioned him. He watched people's mouths move but heard absolutely nothing. He observed their hurried movements and worried expressions. Travelers noticed him briefly, yet most presumed another adult was supervising him nearby. A few individuals slowed their pace, appearing puzzled, but continued onward. The metropolitan area had become accustomed to overlooking situations that resembled difficulties. Daniel's small frame trembled noticeably. His belly ached from emptiness. His legs felt weak and unsteady. His backpack seemed heavier with each passing minute. He was far too drained to adjust it properly. He repeated the lullaby movements his father always showed him with his hands. "Rest now, my boy. People are good." His gestures grew slower. His knees buckled slightly. The platform seemed to tilt and spin. He gripped the bench armrest to remain upright. If not for the presence of a woman approaching deliberately, he would have collapsed entirely. Elizabeth Morgan typically arrived home well before darkness fell. She enjoyed preparing dinner for her son Marcus. She enjoyed hearing about his school activities and friendship dramas. But this particular evening was unusual. The corporate conference had extended for hours. Her migraine throbbed painfully, and the heated disagreement with her husband, Thomas, had drained her emotionally. Thomas had departed for a business trip earlier that day. Elizabeth decided to take a longer route home to clear her thoughts. She had zero indication her existence was about to transform dramatically. As she walked through Riverside Boulevard Station, her attention caught something troubling. A child alone standing beside a bench looking completely lost. Elizabeth's pulse quickened. She rushed forward immediately. The crowd seemed to part around her. "Young man," she called out firmly, "are you lost?" Daniel's eyes widened. He dropped his stuffed rabbit momentarily. He clutched it back against his chest defensively. "Papa," he signed frantically. Elizabeth stopped directly in front of him and knelt down gently, making sure he could see her face clearly. "No, sweetheart," she said slowly, exaggerating her mouth movements. "I'm not your papa, but you're going to be okay now." He focused intently on her lips, trying to understand. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked carefully. He nodded once, then shook his head uncertainly. "Papa said to wait until someone helped me," he signed. Elizabeth felt something crack inside her chest. "Where is he right now?" she asked quietly, speaking very clearly. Daniel's signing became shaky and uncertain. "I don't know," his hands communicated. His movements showed exhaustion. Complete exhaustion. Elizabeth noticed something protruding from his backpack pocket, a folded piece of paper. "May I see this?" she asked gently, pointing to it. Daniel nodded slowly. Elizabeth unfolded the note beneath the bright station lights. She absorbed the words carefully. "Please assist him. I have no means to provide for him any longer. He requires medical devices for his hearing. Please, whoever locates him, show compassion. Robert." Elizabeth's hands began shaking. She looked at the boy again. Deaf, starving, completely worn out, abandoned by circumstance. "Sweetheart, how many hours have you been standing here?" Elizabeth asked, signing basic words she remembered from a college course years ago. Daniel signed back slowly. "Since morning time." Elizabeth's heart constricted painfully. She removed her blazer and draped it around his thin shoulders, then lifted him carefully into her arms. "You're leaving with me," she said with absolute certainty. "I refuse to leave you standing here alone." She didn't contact authorities immediately. She didn't rush toward the nearest hospital. She drove him directly to her home, to warmth, to proper food, to genuine safety, because something deep within her already recognized this child needed her specifically. That evening, she carried him through her front door as though he'd always belonged there. She didn't fully comprehend it yet, but destiny certainly did. This marked the beginning. The night a successful businesswoman discovered a lonely deaf boy at a station and unknowingly became the person who would grant him a completely new existence. Elizabeth carried Daniel into her residence with extreme care, the way someone handles something incredibly valuable. Her home had the scent of vanilla candles and polished hardwood, but tonight it also carried the aroma of fresh soup. Her housekeeper had rapidly prepared a simple meal when Elizabeth telephoned ahead, explaining she was bringing home a child requiring immediate assistance. She positioned Daniel gently on the comfortable couch. "You can rest here safely. I'll bring you some food," she communicated both verbally and through basic signs. She removed her blazer and wrapped it more securely around his shoulders. It practically swallowed his small frame, but it provided warmth and security. Daniel held the fabric close to his face. He inhaled slowly, experiencing the comfort of a space that meant him no harm. The room surrounding him possessed a quiet elegance. The soft ticking of an antique clock, the silent beauty of fresh flowers on the mantel, the gentle illumination from designer lamps. Elizabeth moved deliberately, concerned that any abrupt action might startle him. During the drive home, she had completed 3 phone calls. First to her assistant, instructing clearly, "Cancel tomorrow's morning appointments. I have an urgent personal matter." Then to a pediatric specialist she knew personally. Financial resources could secure an immediate consultation. However, Elizabeth refused to rush Daniel toward a clinical environment. She understood instinctively that a child who'd stood alone all day required emotional warmth first, not stark examination rooms and endless questions. She believed he needed comfort, nourishment, and human kindness before anything medical. When she returned carrying soup and crackers, Daniel had already drifted into sleep, curled beneath her blazer. His breathing came soft and even. He appeared peaceful for the first time that entire day. Elizabeth placed the tray down carefully and settled into the nearby armchair. She observed him quietly, noticing details. His elbows showed small scrapes. His frame seemed slightly too thin for his age. His shoes appeared worn through at the soles. And tucked inside his backpack pocket remained the folded note from his father, a note saturated with anguish and desperation. Elizabeth felt something heavy settle in her chest, a mixture of sorrow and frustration. How could society allow a child like this to stand alone and forgotten? She didn't know Daniel's history, but she felt accountable for him immediately. Elizabeth's house was spacious and elegant, yet it hadn't felt like a genuine home recently. She and her husband Thomas functioned more like professional colleagues than romantic partners. Outwardly, they projected perfection, fundraising galas, vacation photographs, and cordial interactions. But inside their home, the silence felt oppressive. Since Elizabeth's mother had passed away several years earlier, she'd immersed herself completely in her company, and Thomas had buried himself in constant travel. Their marriage had become a sequence of coordinated schedules rather than a source of mutual support. Their son Marcus represented the brightest element of that household, energetic, inquisitive, constantly asking questions. Yet even with his enthusiasm, the house still felt hollow. Tonight, seeing Daniel sleeping on the couch wrapped in her blazer, something inside Elizabeth softened noticeably. She hadn't experienced this particular type of protective tenderness recently. She went upstairs, arranged a small bedroom for visitors, placed fresh linens on a mattress, and positioned a soft stuffed bear near the pillow for Daniel. When she'd finished, she remained in the doorway for an extended moment, thinking deeply about what lay ahead. The following morning, Marcus bounded downstairs with messy hair and boundless energy. He froze abruptly when he spotted a small boy curled beneath his mother's blazer. "Mom," he asked, confused yet intrigued. Elizabeth knelt beside him. "This is Daniel. He needed help yesterday evening, so I brought him here." Marcus approached Daniel with the instinctive kindness children possess naturally. He touched Daniel's shoulder gently. "You're really small," he said softly. Daniel's eyes opened gradually and turned toward Marcus's movement. He reached out and grasped his hand tentatively. "Hello, what's your toy's name?" Marcus asked, pointing to the stuffed rabbit. Daniel signed slowly, spelling out the letters. "Billionaire." Marcus's eyes widened with fascination. Just like that, the boys connected. 2 young hearts discovering each other naturally. Elizabeth felt her chest loosen with relief. Something about their instant connection felt absolutely right. Then she remembered Thomas. She called Thomas to explain what had occurred. "I found a young boy yesterday evening," she told him directly. "He's deaf. He was standing alone at the station. Someone abandoned him there. Thomas remained silent briefly, then responded coldly. Elizabeth, we cannot bring unknown children into our home. He's a child, Elizabeth stated firmly. He requires assistance. We have commitments this weekend, Thomas replied. Important clients are expecting our presence. We can reschedule, Elizabeth said calmly. Thomas's tone grew icier. I refuse to manage a household like this. I will not accept this situation. There was a pause, a long and weighted one. Then Thomas declared, if this represents the life you're choosing, then I won't remain part of it. He collected his belongings that same afternoon and departed. He didn't create a scene or raise his voice. His decision was cold and absolute. The house felt more empty, yet also strangely more peaceful. Elizabeth sat at the kitchen counter, watching Marcus teach Daniel basic signs for different foods. Daniel laughed silently because Marcus's exaggerated gestures looked funny. Elizabeth's heart felt genuinely warm again. She realized her life was shifting dramatically. In the days that came next, Elizabeth focused entirely on helping Daniel adjust his new surroundings. She showed him the layout of the house systematically. The piano room, the staircase, the kitchen area, the living spaces. She placed textured markers on door frames so he could navigate independently. Her household staff also learned to approach him face forward and get his attention before speaking. Daniel gradually began opening up emotionally. At night, Marcus would climb onto the couch beside Elizabeth and describe sounds to Daniel using gestures and drawings. Thunder sounds like this rumbling motion. Birds sound like this chirping movement. Music sounds like this flowing pattern. Daniel always watched with complete fascination. Can I ever hear the sounds? He signed one evening. Elizabeth felt his question pierce her heart deeply. I'm going to do everything possible, she promised. She scheduled appointments with audiology specialists immediately. They conducted comprehensive tests. They explained that hearing devices combined with therapy might restore significant hearing ability. The doctors cautioned the process wouldn't be simple or quick, but genuine hope existed. Hope felt like enough. And so life began transforming gradually. There weren't any dramatic miracles yet. No sudden moments of pure joy. Just small daily occurrences. Hot meals together. Bedtime routines. Morning laughter. Two young boys whispering secrets using flashlights under blankets. Elizabeth observed them constantly and remembered the note from Daniel's father. A father who'd surrendered everything hoping desperately that another person would help his child survive. She decided firmly she would not disappoint that hope. She would help Daniel hear the world properly. She would build a future with the two young boys who had unknowingly rebuilt her heart completely. Morning in the Morgan household had changed entirely. Before Daniel arrived, the house felt cold and impersonal, filled with the subtle tension of a marriage slowly disintegrating. But now it sounded genuinely alive. Small feet racing through corridors. Young voices laughing and debating about who got to choose breakfast first. The house finally felt like a place where children thrived and happiness could flourish. Daniel had been living with them for 4 months. And today marked a crucial day. Today was the procedure, the day that might allow Daniel to hear the world he'd only observed silently. Daniel sat on the edge of the sofa, holding his old stuffed rabbit tightly. His backpack rested beside him, always within reach. But lately, he'd been asking hopeful questions that touched Elizabeth's heart each time. What do birds sound like? What does music feel like? When I hear Mom Elizabeth, will her voice match how she looks? Does Marcus laugh loudly? I think he does. Marcus sat beside him, carefully arranging Daniel's jacket. He did it with such enthusiasm. It appeared like he was preparing Daniel for something magical. You're going to hear me today, Marcus said proudly, signing along. And you're going to say I sound cool. Daniel grinned. I already think you're cool. Marcus beamed. Well, now you'll know for sure. Elizabeth watched them from the dining area. Her coffee had gone cold, but she barely registered it. Her heart felt simultaneously warm and nervous. She had prepared everything imaginable. The top audiology surgeon, a private hospital suite, specialists on standby, legal documentation, ensuring Daniel would always be protected under her guardianship. She'd even contacted social services to guarantee nobody attempted to remove Daniel from the home where he'd finally found safety. Still, fear settled quietly inside her. What if the procedure didn't succeed? What if Daniel woke up frightened? What if she somehow failed him? She was a successful businesswoman, accustomed to solving problems efficiently. But this situation was different. This was love. Genuine love. And love made her feel vulnerable. The drive to the hospital proceeded quietly and gently. Daniel hummed silently in the back seat, holding his stuffed rabbit close. Marcus held Daniel's free hand, as though ensuring he didn't feel alone for even a single moment. Elizabeth kept glancing at them through the mirror, attempting to calm her racing thoughts. When they arrived, nurses greeted Daniel with warm smiles. They complimented his bravery and his neat jacket. Elizabeth completed forms with steady hands, even though her heart pounded loudly inside her chest. Before they wheeled Daniel into the procedure room, he reached out for Elizabeth. "Mom, Elizabeth," he signed carefully. "Yes, sweetheart," she responded, kneeling beside him and signing clearly. "If I get scared, will you be nearby?" She kissed his forehead tenderly. "I'll be right outside the entire time. When you wake up, I'll be the first person you see." Daniel nodded. He trusted her completely, more than he'd trusted anyone previously. As they rolled him away, he held up his stuffed rabbit and signed, "He'll help too." Elizabeth smiled genuinely. "Of course he will." The doors closed, and she stood staring at the empty corridor where he'd disappeared. The procedure lasted for lengthy hours. For hours of pacing restlessly. For hours of Marcus bouncing nervously beside her. For hours of Elizabeth gripping her phone until her knuckles turned white. Finally, the surgeon emerged with an exhausted smile. "Everything went exceptionally well," he announced. He should regain significant hearing ability. Not perfect initially, but with continued therapy and adjustments, his world will expand dramatically. Elizabeth closed her eyes and whispered a silent thank you to the universe. "When can I see him?" she asked urgently. "As soon as he regains consciousness." Daniel woke gradually, like someone surfacing from an incredibly deep dream. His head was wrapped in protective bandages. "Mom, Elizabeth," he signed weakly. She was already positioned by his side, holding his hand firmly. "I'm right here, sweetheart." Marcus climbed onto the chair directly next to Daniel. "We're both here," he said happily, signing simultaneously. We stayed the entire time. Daniel relaxed immediately, feeling their presence. After a brief recovery period, the medical team came to activate the hearing devices. Elizabeth held Daniel's hand tightly. "Are you prepared?" she asked, signing clearly. Daniel nodded nervously. "I think so." They activated the devices gradually. Daniel's eyes widened suddenly. Sound entered his consciousness for the first time. He slowly lifted his hand and tapped his fingers together, hearing the soft clicking noise. His mouth opened in complete surprise. "Mom, Elizabeth," he whispered aloud, his voice uncertain. He turned toward her sound and saw her, his eyes filling with tears. "You sound like warmth," he said softly, his words slightly unclear but genuine. Elizabeth nearly cried. Then Marcus leaned into view, waving enthusiastically. "Hey, this is me. This is how I sound." Daniel laughed through his tears. "You sound happy." Marcus's smile illuminated the entire room. Daniel reached out and touched both their faces, experiencing them fully now with both sight and sound. He was memorizing them completely, understanding what love truly felt like. At that precise moment, Elizabeth realized a profound truth. She had rescued him from silence, but he had rescued her from emptiness. In the weeks that followed, everything felt brand new. Daniel heard the park for the first time. He heard the ocean waves, birds singing, butterflies somehow making tiny sounds, the color of laughter, which he instantly loved. He listened to his own voice, amazed. Elizabeth took the boys to amusement parks, the cinema, and ice cream shops every weekend. At school, Marcus guided Daniel everywhere with obvious pride. Daniel learned rapidly. His mind was sharp, curious, filled with endless questions. One evening, as Elizabeth tucked him in, Daniel looked up at her and asked carefully, Mom Elizabeth, is it acceptable to feel happy, even though my papa isn't here? Elizabeth felt the question deeply in her heart. She brushed his hair gently. Yes, my dear. Your father loved you tremendously. He gave you an opportunity to survive. I believe he would want you to feel happy. I miss him, Daniel whispered. I know, Elizabeth said softly, pulling him into a warm embrace. You're allowed to miss him, and you're allowed to feel happy too. Marcus hugged both of them. We're a family, he declared proudly. Elizabeth smiled genuinely. Yes, we absolutely are. For now, Daniel was secure. He was loved. He had a brother. He had a mother. He had a life filled with sound and possibility. Every night, Elizabeth stood at the doorway observing the two boys sleeping peacefully, and she whispered the same words repeatedly. That station didn't only give Daniel a new life. It gave me one too. Because sometimes a father's desperate sacrifice, a businesswoman's compassion, and a child standing in silence come together to create something miraculous. Daniel finally heard the world, and Elizabeth finally understood what family genuinely means. Moral lessons from this story. First, compassion can transform everything. Elizabeth didn't know Daniel, but one act of compassion rescued his future. Sometimes helping just one person can create something miraculous. Second, family isn't only genetics. It's love, attention, and commitment. Daniel wasn't Elizabeth's biological son, yet she protected him, cared for him, and granted him a new existence. Family is selected by the heart, not only by birth. Third, you never understand what someone is experiencing. So, always show empathy. People passed Daniel at the station and did nothing. A little awareness, a little concern could have helped sooner. Never ignore someone requiring assistance. Fourth, desperation can push people toward impossible choices. Robert didn't abandon Daniel from cruelty, but from desperation and love. Sometimes people make wrong decisions because they feel they have zero alternatives. Fifth, hope can endure even in darkness. Daniel stood deaf, hungry, and alone. Yet, he believed someone caring would notice him. Even in the darkest moments, hope can keep a person going. 6. Recovery requires time, patience, and love. Daniel didn't improve instantly. Elizabeth had to care for him day after day consistently. Real healing, whether emotional or physical, is a gradual process. 7th, wealth is meaningful only when used to help others. Elizabeth had money for years, but it only became valuable when she used it to save a child's life. 8th, children recognize love more than anything else. Marcus welcomed Daniel with open arms. Children understand kindness without requiring explanation. 9th, a loving home can rebuild a broken heart. Daniel healed. Elizabeth healed. Even a troubled home built on love can repair wounds you cannot see. 10th, everyone deserves another chance. Daniel got another chance at hearing, at safety, at family. Even Robert tried to improve. Second chances can transform destinies. 11th, love multiplies when shared. Elizabeth didn't lose anything by loving Daniel. Instead, her life became richer and fuller. My amazing viewers, if you enjoyed this story, please show some appreciation. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments which part of the world you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Yes, you specifically, because every click, every comment, every subscription keeps this storytelling fire burning bright. Thank you for watching. I hope you gained 1 or 2 lessons from this story. See you in our next video. Goodbye for now.